The sickeningly sweet scent of sandalwood oil hung heavy in the stagnant air, failing entirely to mask the stench of rotting black mud welling up from beneath the teak floorboards. Inside the faded lotus-patterned mosquito net, Crew Saman's skeletal frame lay sunken into the mattress, his breaths rattling in his throat like dry, dead leaves. Beside his headboard, the thick yellow wax of the life-extending candle spat and flared violently. It threw frantic, twisting shadows against the wooden walls, though every shutter in the stilt house was barred tight against the night. "You can't go yet, Crew," I whispered, the polished wooden mallets feeling heavy and slick with sweat in my trembling hands. "You haven't given me the final song." I raised the mallets over the curved, boat-shaped body of the Ranat Ek. I didn't begin with a standard scale, nor did I offer a bow of respect. I struck the highest bamboo key on the far right, then the next, moving inexorably to the left. I was playing the Satu Khan, the sacred invocation used to invite the divine, in reverse. I was playing to drag a departing spirit backward by its heels. Tonk, tonk, tonk. With every strike, the resonance didn't seem to bloom from the instrument itself. It bled out of the ancient timber columns and the warped walls of the house. Then, the ragged tearing of Crew Saman's breathing shifted. It smoothed out. It synchronized. The rise and fall of his hollow chest matched the precise, unnatural cadence of my mallets. I didn't dare look directly at the bed. Instead, my eyes flicked to the bronze bowl of holy water resting near his pillow. In the trembling reflection, disturbed by floating droplets of white wax, I saw my own hunched shoulders. But I also saw the teak crossbeam near the ceiling. Perched in the shadows of the rafters, a pitch-black figure crouched in a deep, animalistic squat. It was staring down at Crew Saman's body with a face utterly devoid of eyes. My hands faltered. The left mallet struck the wooden block, but the pitch that rang out was a sickening, dissonant half-step too low. I knew the instrument perfectly. I hadn't missed the key. On the bed, Crew Saman's body convulsed. A violent shudder snapped his spine rigid against the mat, and his eyelids peeled back. The irises were gone, leaving only a milky, dead white. Slowly, an arm emerged from beneath the blanket. The fingers, stiff and rigid as carved mahogany, curled inward, beckoning me into the mosquito net. The humid air in the room suddenly turned to ice against my spine. The ritual had worked, and the invitation had been answered, but whatever was breathing inside my master's body was not him. Every instinct screamed at me to flee down the wooden stairs and into the night, yet I found myself dragging my knees across the floorboards toward the beckoning corpse. The heavy, sweet aroma of sandalwood had curdled. It now reeked of something foul and feral, the suffocating stench of a swollen carcass rotting deep inside a hollowed tree trunk. When my trembling fingers brushed Crew Saman's forearm, my breath caught. There was no yield of human flesh. His skin felt coarse, grooved and brittle, like ancient timber baked to a husk beneath a relentless sun. The final song. The words didn't come from his parted gray lips. The raspy whisper seemed to vibrate up through the cracks in the floorboards directly beneath me. Bring your ear closer. Before I could lean in, a solitary sound echoed through the suffocating silence of the room. Tonk! It came from the Ranat Ek sitting unattended behind me. A single note had been struck, a low, sickeningly flat T that made my teeth ache. My stomach plummeted. I knew the superstitions. An instrument playing itself was a marker of proximity. It had stepped closer. My eyes darted to the bronze bowl of holy water. The rafters reflected in the water's surface were empty, but the shadow hadn't vanished. It had descended. In the rippling reflection, the eyeless entity was standing directly behind me. Its arm was raised, long, multi-jointed fingers ending in splinter-like claws, slowly reaching out to press against my temple. "Picture her," the voice beneath the floorboards hissed. "Keep your mother's face in your mind." I obeyed, grasping for the familiar warmth of her smile. But the moment I reached for the memory, it dissolved. Her face blurred and washed away like wet ink left out in the monsoon rain. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized I couldn't remember the sound of her laugh. And then, horrifyingly, I couldn't remember her name. My memories were being actively siphoned. They were the grotesque fuel required to power Crusamon's borrowed breath. With every second I spent tethered to this ritual, my soul was being hollowed out to make room for the song. Bang! A violent, unnatural gale slammed against the house, throwing the heavy teak window shutters open and instantly blowing out the life-extending candle. Pitch blackness swallowed the room, leaving only the faint, dying ember of a joss stick. In the dark, an ice-cold breath ghosted over my earlobe. It carried the overwhelming stench of stagnant black swamp mud. "How many more years will you trade?" A voice chuckled, wet and grating against my eardrum. "For something you won't even remember your own name to play." I lunged backward, desperately trying to grab the mallets to strike the closing chords and sever the ritual. But my body refused to obey. My wrists locked in midair, rigid and paralyzed, as though thick, invisible strings had been sewn through my joints, binding my movements to the figure on the bed. Through the darkness, accompanied by the wet tearing of unseen cartilage and the sharp, rhythmic snapping of dry wood, the silhouette of my master began to slowly sit up. The angles of his limbs were completely, horrifyingly wrong. The darkness in the room was no longer just an absence of light. It was a physical weight, thick and suffocating like the black swamp mud festering beneath the stilts of the house. The silhouette of Crusamon lurched toward me. Crack, snap. The sounds echoing in the stifling air weren't popping human joints. They were the sharp, violent reports of dry bamboo splintering under immense pressure. I scrambled backward in my mind, clawing for a tether. My name, the village I came from, the face of anyone I had ever loved. But there was nothing. The reservoir of my identity had been drained dry, leaving behind a terrifying, cavernous void where only the descending, dissonant notes of the reversed Satukan echoed. "You wanted it so badly, didn't you? The final song." The voice didn't originate from the master's gray lips. It emanated from the towering, suffocating shadow that now fully superimposed itself over the body. An arm shot out, fingers rigid and entirely devoid of warmth clamped around my wrist like a vice. The breath I had borrowed from the other side to sustain my master was now being violently reclaimed, and the entity was collecting a heavy toll. Panic flared, but my muscles refused to fire. A terrifying heaviness bled into my veins. I watched in mute horror as the skin of my forearm began to change. The pores stretched and deepened, the flesh hardening into rough, striated ridges of bark. The sensation in my fingertips was fading rapidly, replaced by the dull, numb density of raw timber yielding to a craftsman's chisel. With a final, agonizing will of effort, I forced my neck to pivot, casting my gaze down to the bronze water bowl resting near my knees. A sliver of pale, sickly moonlight bled through a crack in the wallboards, illuminating the water's surface and revealing the horrifying truth. The figure sitting up on the mattress was not Crusamon. It never had been. It was a life-sized, crudely carved wooden marionette draped in the master's garments. The sickening stench of rot, the scent I had mistaken for the muddy swamp, was the real Crusaman, his corpse decaying in the damp earth directly beneath the floorboards. He had been dead for days. Every whispered lesson, every secret of the song had been a lure. The shadow was an ancient, hollow thing, feeding on my memories, my years, and my very soul to fill its own endless void. I opened my mouth to scream, but the air caught in a throat that was nothing more than an empty, carved cylinder of wood. The ritual was incomplete. The final note remained unplayed. The mallets fused to my rigid, splintering arms, becoming permanent extensions of my deadened arms. I could feel the invisible strings pulling taut against my joints, dragging my stiffening form toward the trapdoor in the floorboards, pulling me down into the oppressive dark of the underhouse to join the entity's hidden collection. The next morning, the villagers found the Teak house completely abandoned. There was no trace of the master, nor of his final student. Yet, on nights when the waning moon hangs thin and sharp over the village, the discordant backward notes of the Ranat Ek drift up from the black earth beneath the stilts, playing a song that never truly ends. And anyone foolish enough to linger in the dark, to press their ear to the wind and try to decipher the melody, will soon find themselves struggling to remember their own name.